Hey, thanks so much for joining us today. We're really glad you're here. Wherever you're watching from, we believe God has something meaningful for you through this message. We're a community Christian church, and our mission is helping people find their way back to God. We're one church meeting in 7 locations across Chicagoland. Whether you're exploring faith, coming back to church, or looking to grow deeper, we'd love to take that next step with you. And if you're watching from outside the area, we encourage you to get connected to a church in your community. Having people walk with you makes all the difference. Today we're coming to you from our Plainfield location, and our prayer is simple, that this message meets you right where you are and helps you move forward in your journey with Jesus.
It's probably not news to you that we live in a time of division and debate. Opinions are louder, the stakes feel higher. In fact, did you know that the American Psychological Association found that 70% of Americans say that the future of our country causes them much major stress in their lives? And that's across political lines. It doesn't matter where you land, you feel it. And I think for most of us, when the tension rises, we instinctively have one of 3 responses. You see, some of us fight, some of us take flight, and others of us freeze. For example, some of you would say that, yeah, my instinctive response is I'm a fighter. Like I'm ready. Like if somebody comes at me, I am ready. And maybe you already can like right away know what you want to say. And if you're a fighter, you might think to yourself, like, I don't start fights, but I will finish them. Like, how many of you would say your instinct is to fight? How many of you? Okay, some of us have that instinct. Now, some of us have maybe the opposite instinct. Our instinct is to flight. Like the minute the tension rises, you're out. Like you will avoid the conversation, you'll change the subject, you will get up and physically leave the room if you have to. Like conflict starts and you disappear like a magician. Like how many of you would say that's you flight? Okay, quite a few of us there. Now, some of us, we don't fight or flight, we freeze. Like in that moment, we just become immobilized. Like we don't leave, but we don't say anything, and it just feels like all of a sudden we don't remember the English language. Now, this is me, and it's not until hours or even days later that you like think, oh, this is what I should have said. Like how many of you are freezers out there? Okay, a fair number of us are freezers as well. Now, here's what's interesting. Most of us recognize that we have this instinctive response in the obvious moments, like arguments or conflicts, or even when there's some kind of physical danger. But what if I told you that you're experiencing this response, maybe even far more than you realize? Because we're living in a cultural moment where everything seems to be heightened. The rhetoric is sharper, the headlines are louder, the opinions are stronger. It feels like every day there's a new controversy, a new outrage, a new reason to either get angry or to get anxious. And if you pay attention, you probably even can feel this in your physical body. Some of us, like our chest begins to tighten. Others of us, we can like literally feel our blood pressure rising. Maybe it feels like every nerve is on fire. And that's not just a coincidence. In fact, a couple years ago, a research group at the University of Southern California did a fascinating study. They put people in brain scanners, and then they challenged their beliefs, both their political beliefs and their non-political beliefs. And the results were actually pretty astounding. When people's non-political beliefs were challenged, their brains remained relatively calm. But when their political beliefs were challenged, the brains like lit up. The parts of the brain that are the same parts that respond to physical danger lit up. Which means when someone challenges your political beliefs, you react in the same way as if someone was punching you in the face. It's crazy. It's like your nervous system is saying, this is not just disagreement, this is danger. So it means when someone challenges your political tribe, your body isn't just thinking, it's bracing. And that's why some of us fight. Some of us take flight. And some of us freeze because it doesn't feel like a conversation. It feels like survival. But we have to ask ourselves, why? Why? Why does this hit us at that level? Why does political disagreement feel like danger? Why does the temperature rise so quickly? Well, let me tell you why. It's because somewhere along the way, probably without even realizing it, we've misplaced the source of our security. We've taken things like political outcomes and cultural decisions and the future of our nations, and we quietly ask them to carry the weight of our hope. We started looking to them to answer questions they were never meant to answer. Questions like, will you keep me safe? Will you make things right? Will you secure the future that I long for? And when those things feel unstable, we feel unstable. When those things feel threatened, we feel threatened. Because whatever we trust to hold us is what we instinctively defend. That's what's underneath the anxiety. That's what's underneath the anger. That's what's underneath this instinct to fight, flight, or freeze. We feel like our security is in jeopardy. Now, before we go any further, I want to make one thing very clear. Because I know already, like especially you flighters, you're going, oh, this is making me nervous. And so let me just be clear about this. I have no desire today to pull anyone to the right. I have no desire today to pull anyone to the left. I have no desire to pull anyone to the middle. Here's what I desire today, is that together we would pull each other to Jesus. To Jesus. And that's why the royal psalms are so helpful. See, the royal psalms are given to God's people for moments like this, not to deny the tension, but to reorient us in the middle of it, to remind us that there is a throne that does not wobble, and that there is a king whose reign is not up for election. We've been in this series where we've been looking at different types of psalms, 8 distinctive ways that we can go deeper in our prayer life with God. You see, the Psalms, they're not like polished prayers or spiritual cliches. They are honest words spoken to a real God in the middle of real life. And they invite us to move beyond surface prayers into a deeper, more authentic, more real relationship with God. And today, we're looking at the royal Psalms and how they can reorient our hearts and our minds in the middle of chaotic cultural moments. Psalm 2, the psalm we just read, it doesn't begin with calm or clarity. It begins with chaos. You see, the world is in rebellion. As the psalmist asks, why do the nations conspire? And the peoples plot in vain. The kings of the earth rise up, and the rulers band together against the Lord and against his anointed, saying, let us break their chains and throw off their shackles. You see, Psalm 2, it wasn't written during a time of peaceful coexistence. Nations are conspiring, people are plotting. The kings of the earth are forming alliances against God and against his anointed king. And these raging kings, they cry out in verse 3, let us break their chains and throw off their shackles. You see, this imagery is meant to give us a picture of how the rulers of the world view God's authority. They see it as bondage rather than blessing. They want to be free from what they see as the chains and the shackles of God's commands. They want to rule according to their own wisdom, for their own purposes. And Psalm 2 was written during a time of political tension, of power struggles, of different competing visions for the future. In other words, a time that's not all that different from our own. See, our world is in a mess, at least in part, because every political pundit and every political party believes that they are the answer to the world's problems. But as the late French philosopher and theologian Jacques Ellul says, the political illusion is, at bottom, a form of idolatry. A wish to set up a form of power independent of God, to rely on one's own or another's power instead of on the love and promise of God. And we have to realize that the rebellion described in Psalm 2 isn't just happening out there with kings and nations. It can be happening in here too. Anytime we see a political outcome and we think, oh, now I'll be okay. Or we see that same political outcome and think, oh, now I won't be okay. We're doing really the exact same thing that the kings in Psalm 2 are doing. We're saying our security is in political outcomes. And when those outcomes don't go our way, we feel this instinct to fight or to flight or to freeze. The world's powers are in rebellion against God. But the psalmist refuses to treat this rebellion as a genuine threat. As the psalm moves forward, it paints a picture of reality. The one enthroned in heaven laughs. The Lord scoffs at them. He rebukes them in his anger and terrifies them in his wrath, saying, I have installed my king on Zion, my holy mountain. It's interesting that God's reaction to the nation's rebellion is not alarm, but amusement. He laughs. Just picture this in your mind, why the world's rulers are plotting and scheming and grabbing for power. God is not anxious. He is not scrambling. He laughs. And understand, it's not because God doesn't think things are serious or that God doesn't see the problems. No, this laughter is meant to bring perspective. It's meant to show us that it's ridiculous that God would be threatened by any power of this world. It kind of makes me think about when you see that toddler throwing a tantrum in the middle of the grocery store. How many of you have ever been the parent of that toddler, right? Lots of people have had that experience, right? And this little toddler, he rages and he screams and he kicks his legs and he flails his arms and he tries to escape the grasp of his parent. And it's a scene, all right. But everyone watching this knows who really has the power. We joke that it's but there's no way that the toddler could overcome the power of the parent. Now, the parent may choose to give in to the demands. Okay, but make no mistake, the parent is the one with the power to choose. And friends, it's ridiculous to think that the rulers of this world would have any real power compared to God. And so, God laughs. And if God is laughing, maybe we don't need to be bracing ourselves. As the psalm moves on, God speaks. He announces that he has installed his chosen king, and it's a rebuke to every earthly power that imagines itself autonomous. The reality is God is the one in control. And as the psalm continues, his chosen king steps forward and says, I will proclaim the Lord's decree. He said to me, you are my son. Today I have become your father. Ask me, and I will make the nations your inheritance, the ends of the earth your possession. You will break them with a rod of iron. You will dash them to pieces like pottery. Now, let's pause for just a minute and ask, who is this king Psalm 2 is talking about? You see, scholars generally agree that the Psalms were written over a series of centuries from 1000 to 400 BC. So is this psalm talking about one of Israel's kings? Or is it talking about a future messianic king? Well, the best answer I can give you to that question is yes. And here's what I mean. Think of it this way. Think of a song that you've listened to for years. The first time you heard it, Like it meant something. Maybe it was just catchy and you just enjoyed it. But as time went on, like maybe that song became associated with a particular experience that you had, or something that happened with another person, and now suddenly that song has another meaning. Like it's the same song, the same lyrics, but now it has different levels of meaning. Take, for example, the classic song Yesterday by the Beatles. Any Beatles fans, or at least Let It Be Christmas fans here? You know, maybe the first time you heard the song, you just liked it. Yesterday, all my troubles seem... Okay, that's as much I'm going to sing for you, all right? But look at the lyrics there. Like yesterday, all my troubles seem so far away, but now it looks as though they're here to say, oh, I believe in yesterday. And again, the first time you heard it, it's just beautifully written. Maybe it was, it got stuck in your head and you just liked the song. But then you went through a breakup. Like your high school sweetheart broke your heart. And when you hear the song, like you feel the pain and it starts to mean something different to you. And then maybe a few years later, you lose someone you love. And your heart is shattered. And in the middle of your grief, you hear this song, and suddenly it becomes part of your lament. It's the same song, but it carries more than one meaning as time goes on. And you see, that's what's happening in the Royal Psalms. It meant something real in the moment it was written. Psalm 2 may have been a psalm that was read over King David at his coronation, declaring that he was God's chosen king. But then the song keeps having more layers of meaning as the story goes on. In fact, since royal psalms often describe an ideal king, the one who rules with perfect justice, faithfulness, and righteousness, they carry a deeper meaning for those of us that are living on the other side of the cross. You see, when we read the royal psalms as Christ followers, we should read them through the lens of the messianic king that they pointed to, Jesus. When God says, "You are my son, today I become your father," this decree that was spoken over David now in the fullness of time becomes the word spoken over Jesus. I mean, think about it, at Jesus' baptism, as he comes up from the water, we're told that the heavens open and everyone heard this voice from heaven saying, "This is my son whom I love, with him I am well pleased." And then a little while later on the top of a mountain as Jesus is transfigured before his disciples, a cloud envelops them. And again, the disciples hear this voice that says, "This is my son whom I love, listen to him." And then eventually, fast forward to a Sunday morning near a garden tomb, and Jesus walks out of the grave as the true king, a king who will never die again. And the writer of Acts says, "We tell you the good news. What God promised our ancestors, he has fulfilled for us, their children, by raising up Jesus, as it is written in the," what? Second Psalm. "You are my son. Today I have become your father." In the fullness of time, Psalm 2 was always meant to point us to Jesus. And it's meant to remind us as his followers that no matter how much the rulers of this world plot and conspire and grab for power, Jesus is king. Jesus is in charge. Jesus has won the victory. And that's why the final movement of the psalm is a call to reorient your perspective around this reality. You see, the psalm addresses the kings of the earth, the same ones who were conspiring and plotting, and calls for them to be wise. "Therefore, you kings, be wise. Be warned, you rulers of the earth. Serve the Lord with fear and celebrate his rule with trembling. Kiss his son, or he will be angry, and your way will lead to your destruction, for his wrath can flare up in a moment." You see, the psalmist here, he's not condemning the kings, at least not yet. But he's calling for them to realize that the Lord rules over them, and they would be wise to recognize that and to serve him with reverence. And then the psalm ends with a beatitude, a blessing for everyone. Blessed are all who take refuge in him. You see, fight, flight, or freeze aren't your only options in the middle of cultural chaos. You can choose faith. You can choose to take refuge in Jesus. Basically, this psalm is a call to reorient your view of reality. If you've been stressed and full of fear because of the boast of and the actions of worldly rulers, whether that's today, whether that's 4 years from now, whether that's 8 years from now, that's the way you've been feeling, this psalm encourages you to take a deep breath. King Jesus is not worried. He's not wringing his hands, wondering how everything is going to turn out. He is reigning on his throne, and so you can trust him. You can take refuge in him. And in the same way, if you've been feeling confident, full of trust because your preferred worldly leaders are in power, whether that's today or 4 years from now or 8 years from now, the psalm is a warning to you to take a step back, to be careful to not trust in worldly leaders, because there is only one true king. There is only one king who is worthy of your allegiance. And so take your refuge in him. You see, royal psalms like Psalm 2, they deepen our relationship with God by forming our trust and our allegiance in Jesus as king, teaching us where true authority, where true security, where true hope is to be grounded. Friends, as we wrap this up, I want to invite you into a moment of prayerful response. Not just to hear Psalm 2, but to let it search you, because what Psalm 2 trains us to do is to not look away from the noise, but actually to look through it. To look through it again to a throne that does not wobble and a king whose term has no limits. So everyone, take a deep breath. And let's just slow down for a moment. If it helps you to focus, you can close your eyes. And I want you to think about those feelings we talked about earlier. The tightness, the pressure, the sense that something is at stake, and let's just bring that to God. Psalm 2 begins with rebellion. Why do the nations conspire? Underneath this plotting is fear. It's misplaced trust. It's looking for security in people and places that were never meant to hold it. So just in these moments, ask God, where have I been placing my security? Where have I been trusting something that cannot hold me? Just let God bring that to your mind. No shame, just honesty. The psalm goes on to say, the one enthroned in heaven laughs. It's a reminder that God is not pacing, he is not stressed, he is ruling, he is relaxed, which means that you and I don't have to be anxious or worried. Our King is in control. Just sit with that for a second. Let that reality settle you. Psalm 2 ends with an invitation. Serve the Lord. Take refuge in him. It's an invitation to reorient your heart and your mind to once again place your trust and your hope in Jesus. What do you need to let go of in order to do that? Maybe it's fear. Maybe it's anger. Maybe it's the need to win, the need to be right, the need to control what happens next. In this moment, just ask God, what needs to shift in me? What do I need to let go of in order to reorient my heart and my mind on you, Jesus. Jesus, in these moments, we recognize that at times we have mistakenly put our trust in people or in things that were never meant to hold them. That Jesus, only you are meant to hold our hopes, our security, our peace. Thank you for being a refuge from the time of King David all the time to today. Jesus, you are the King who is worthy of our allegiance, worthy of our praise, worthy of our lives, worthy of our hearts. God, pull us closer to you. Help us navigate the chaos of this world with our eyes looking through the problems to your throne, so that we will always remember that you are the true King who is reigning. And it is in your name above all names that we pray. Amen. Amen.
Thanks again for being with us today at Community. We hope this message encouraged your faith and gave you clarity on what your next step might be. If you're in Chicagoland, we'd love to see you in person. Just head to communitychristian.org to find a location near you. And if you're not local, we'd be happy to help you find a church near you. Or maybe God is calling you to start a micro church. We're passionate about seeing a thriving church in every neighborhood, and that might begin with you. If you'd like to partner with Community through giving, you can do that anytime at givenow.cc or through the Community app or website. Thanks for spending part of your day with us. We hope to see you again soon.